Imagine, in the vast chess labyrinth of modern politics where every move is measured not only in rating percentages but also in the lives of millions, one figure suddenly becomes a hostage to their own party. Volodymyr Zelensky is not just a president, he is a man symbol who has become the embodiment of an era. But in 2026, the time that once worked in his favor turns into a merciless timer. Today, we analyze a scenario that is increasingly discussed in closed rooms in Washington, Brussels, and Kyiv. Not a loud coup or Maidan, but a quiet, systemic, almost surgical removal of the current leader from the political coordinate system. We will show what political zugzwang looks like when any move leads to a worsening position. Why Western support turns into a harsh audit and internal opposition ceases to be shadowy. This is not a forecast or an attempt to peer into a crystal ball. It is a logical breakdown of trends that make 2026 a point of no return for Ukraine's sixth president. Welcome to Global Vector. If our calm and balanced view of events helps you navigate the information noise, support the channel with a like, subscription, and comment. Your support is what allows us to create such large-scale analyses. Let's go. The phenomenon of 2022 versus the reality of 2026 transition from messiah to crisis administrator. In 2022, Zelensky accomplished the impossible. He united the nation and the world around one image, an unwavering leader in an olive t-shirt. This was the peak of political messianism, but in big politics, as in metallurgy, there is a law of metal fatigue. By early 2026, the image of the war hero inevitably begins to clash with society's cold and harsh demand for the image of a peace manager. The legitimacy trap. The term of office extended due to martial law becomes the main target of criticism by 2026. Even the most devoted supporters start asking, where does state necessity end and quiet usurpation begin? In the absence of elections, any mistake by the authorities is perceived twice as painfully as the people have no legal valve to release steam. Erosion of unity. If at the beginning of the conflict any criticism of Bankova was seen as playing into the enemy's hands, by 2026 it has become commonplace. The political field, which seemed scorched in 2022, begins to rapidly recover. New, or well-forgotten old, players emerge. They are no longer afraid to ask direct questions. Where do billions for reconstruction go? Why does mobilization happen this way? And why hasn't corruption in the defense sector been eradicated yet? The magic of daily video addresses gradually fades. The viewer has grown accustomed to them like background noise. Now people demand not inspiring words but specifics, lights in windows, heat in homes, and most importantly, understanding. What will happen tomorrow? When a leader stops providing answers to these basic questions, he begins to lose the most precious thing, the mental connection with his electorate. The Army Shadow, Generals versus Politicians. Thesis: the Army as a new political subject. The main challenge for Zelensky in 2026 is not politicians in expensive suits or old oligarchs. His real opponents are people in camouflage. Over these years, the Army has become the most respected and influential institution in the country. And this institution is forming its own leaders whose authority was forged not in studios but on the front lines. The shadow of Zelensky and his successors. Even if popular generals are on diplomatic assignments or in reserve, their names have turned into powerful political brands. By 2026, a veterans party has de facto formed in Ukraine, a huge force of millions of people with combat experience. They have accumulated a massive array of questions for civilian authorities. The phrase, "we held the front while you divided budgets," becomes the main slogan of this time. Conflict of priorities. We see a classic clash of interests. Political leadership demands media victories and symbolic steps to maintain Western attention. Military leadership demands rationality, preservation of lives, and recognition that resources are not infinite. This long-standing conflict surfaces by 2026. Any presidential decision that seems politically motivated, adventurism to the general staff causes immediate rejection in the trenches. It is important to understand the military are not preparing a classic coup. They don't need it. They simply become an alternative pole of trust. And when international partners see that the army trusts the president less than its own officers, they begin to change communication channels bypassing Bankova. Washington's audit, when an ally becomes an auditor, shift in paradigm in the US and EU. 2026 is the time after major elections in the US. Whoever occupies the Oval Office, the era of blank checks and unconditional support is officially over. The time of pragmatic cold revisionism arrives. Conditions for aid. Washington and Brussels switch to the language of harsh ultimatums. The formula is simple: further financial and military aid in exchange for full democratization. This is a polite form of demanding elections. Zelensky finds himself in zugzwang. Holding elections amid disappointment is almost a guaranteed loss. Refusing them means stopping funding, leading to immediate collapse of the front and economy. We have reached the critical point. Analysts identify three main paths by which Volodymyr Zelensky's political career could end in 2026. The Ukrainian Churchill scenario: Zelensky, showing political wisdom, announces elections himself and states he will not participate. He positions himself as the man who saved the country in its darkest hour, but acknowledges that peace-building requires different people. He leaves with dignity, securing a place in history textbooks as a hero, handing power to a coalition government. The technical resignation scenario: as a result of an internal crisis and Western pressure, a government of national salvation is created. The president formally remains in office but effectively becomes a ceremonial figure. Real power shifts to a prime minister supported by the military and Western technocrats. This is a quiet exit through stripping of powers. The electoral collapse scenario: under external pressure, elections are held anyway. Zelensky runs hoping for remnants of charisma, but suffers a crushing defeat from a coalition of pragmatists or military party. This is the most painful option, completely nullifying his political legacy. What comes after? The new political map: Ukraine. After the transition, the sunset of the Zelensky era will not mean the end of the state. On the contrary, in 2026, Ukraine may enter a phase of cold recovery. It will be a time of people of a different mold, less emotional, more calculating, focused on internal institutions rather than external effects. We will see a demand for strict decentralization. Regions and cities that bore the burden of war will demand more rights and resources. The political map will become motley. Instead of one dominant force, a complex coalition of interests will emerge. It will be a difficult but necessary process of the nation's maturation, having outgrown its idol. Summing up our large-scale analysis: the political finale of Volodymyr Zelensky in 2026 is not a catastrophe or someone's evil will. It is a natural, almost biological process of evolution of the state system that has hit the limit of its capabilities. History is often ironic and even cruel to its heroes. We remember Winston Churchill, who led Britain to victory but lost the elections right after the war ended, because the nation needed not a great commander, but someone to rebuild housing and provide jobs. We remember Charles de Gaulle, who saved France's honor but resigned under pressure from young protesters who saw him as a symbol of stagnation. Zelensky has already inscribed his name and history in golden letters in February 2022. That cannot be taken away, but the tragedy of a leader is that his main virtues in one era become his main weaknesses in another. His uncompromising stance, which saved Kyiv, may become a barrier to peace in 2026. His charisma, which united the world, may turn into an irritating factor for a tired population. The main question today is not whether Zelensky will leave. The main question is how he will leave. Will it become the start of a new constructive cycle for Ukraine, or will the country plunge into internal chaos at the most critical moment of recovery? Political zugzwang is when any move leads to losses. But sometimes the only way to win in such a situation is to leave the table and pass the game to another player, while preserving the board itself. And what do you think, friends? Which of the three scenarios we outlined today is most likely in the reality of 2026? Is it possible to hold elections before the end of hostilities, or will Ukraine choose the path of technical power transition? And most importantly, who, in your opinion, can become that leader of recovery the country so desperately needs? Write your opinion in the comments. We read every one of them, and it is your thoughts that help us make our analyses deeper and more objective. For us, it is important to create a platform for calm and reasonable discussion. This was Global Vector. Don't forget to support us with a like and subscribe to the channel if you value quality analytics without slogans and propaganda. Hit the bell so you don't miss our next big breakdown on the situation in Europe. Take care of yourselves, keep critical thinking, and remember, after every sunset comes a sunrise. See you in the next broadcast.